believes I can't sleep.
It's time to listen to Courtney at last on the Ramblings of an Insomniac podcast.
Hello, Insomniacs. Welcome to another episode of the Ramblings of an Insomniac. I'm Courtney. How the heck are you? Good day, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be, where you are, wherever you are. This is one of those episodes that I didn't really have a game plan. I didn't have any idea whatsoever what I was going to talk about. So it's yet another episode where I quite literally hold true to the ramblings of an insomniac theme, and I just ramble about whatever is on my mind. Currently is the fact that I stepped in a thing of dog shit, didn't realize it, walked all over my porch. Thank God I was outside. I was not inside. And tracked it everywhere. And the ironic thing is I was picking up poop in my backyard when it happened. That's like what I was doing, was picking up poop. And apparently the one little thing of poop that I missed, I stepped in. So that's kind of the story of my life. Always getting into shit, stepping in shit, talking shit, being a dumb shit. Being the dumb shit is usually probably what happens the most, I would say. That's probably a common theme. But yeah, so that was fun and annoying. And it's my fault because I have 869 dogs. And I know a lot of you listening are going to be like, well, that's your choice. God, I used to work for somebody that would always go, well, that's your choice. Meanwhile, she would complain incessantly about things that are 1000% her choice. 1000% didn't just happen upon her. They were all her choice. Didn't stop her from complaining about it incessantly or being a bitch about it or giving advice to everybody else how they should live. While she's a bitter person, but it was annoying because even if something is someone's choice, sometimes they don't have a lot of choices. They have many choices that are presented to them. And sometimes they're all very difficult choices. And sometimes they have to make a choice like, yes, you can choose to work or not. But if you don't work, how are you going to pay your bills? Who is going to give you insurance so you can go to the doctor? So yes, you can make the choice not to work. You can make the choice to try to find another job. But in a lot of places, jobs are hard to come by. In a lot of places, jobs aren't just, there aren't a lot of jobs available. And sometimes if you choose to quit a job, maybe you're making quite a bit of money because maybe you've been there for a good hunk of time. And so if you start over, you're going to be getting a pay cut. And now you already have a lifestyle in which you have bills. So if you're living beyond your means, that's one thing. But if you were able to pay them and then suddenly your choice is to quit because maybe you live with a boss that's god awful, yes, you can choose to quit. But then you have to think of things like, can I find another job? If so, how long is it going to take me to find another job? Can I take a pay cut? Can I afford my bills? What things can I cut out of my life if I have to take a pay cut? What can I cut out of my life? So yes, there are choices for sure. But it's not like they're easy choices. It's not like someone just made it because they just didn't have information. They didn't do their research. They were being, dumb and doing a last minute thing. Sometimes people make choices because they don't really, yes, they have other choices, but they're a lot more complicated and a lot worse for them. So they made the best choice they had. And sometimes we just make mistakes. Sometimes we just make poor choices. That doesn't mean we're not allowed to be sad or angry or depressed or whatever for a moment. That doesn't mean we can't vent about it. That's your choice. That's how she would say it too. Well, that's your choice. Okay, well, it was your choice to buy a business, and it was your choice to continue to work at that business and then decide to buy that business. And you knew that that business was a 24-hour, 365-day a year business. You knew that you wouldn't be able to really take vacations or have time off. So should I tell you you don't get to complain about it? You complain about money, but it's your choice to have Amazon show up every single day, several times a day, and buy a brand new car in cash and buy all new furniture and buy new tables instead of giving raises, and then talk about how you don't have the money to give raises, yet you have the money to buy new cars in cash and new couches and tables and TVs and outside furniture and electric bikes that were $3,000. And, so it was your choice to not come over and sit on a stool when you were capable of sitting on a stool. And yes, you weren't capable of doing other parts of the job, but it was your choice to sit home and order things on Amazon and rack up a bunch of money that you kept claiming you didn't have and talking about how broke you were. That was your choice to do those things. But yet you still complained about not having money and having to work at a place where you don't get vacations and have to be there all the time. So, we all have choices, yes. And sometimes those choices, though, suck. And it's okay to be able to complain about them. Now, if it's your choice, as in, let's say you're in a bad relationship and this person was great at the beginning. You didn't know that they had all these demons. Or maybe you did, but you were working on them and, you had your own. So you figured you guys could work on them together. And then let's say things happen, but you're like, hey, I believe in not just giving up right away. No one has, hit me or anything. So I'm just going to try to make it work by going to counseling because people give up way too easily. They don't try very hard. So I'm going to go to counseling. So then let's say you guys go to counseling and you go to counseling together and you go to counseling separate. And let's say it still doesn't work, but you're like, okay, let's just kind of keep trying. At some point, during that, people will go, well, it's your choice to stay with them. It's your choice to stay with them. Yes. And they're correct. It is your choice. But again, what if you're just first trying different things? Because we live in a society now where people get divorced after 72 hours. We have the Britney Spears and the Kim Kardashian and the celebrities that last, 2 seconds together, and they make marriage a mockery. And they don't live up to their vows and they don't take their vows seriously. Now, if someone is abusing you, obviously, I don't think that you should stay with them. If someone's been cheating on you, and they keep cheating, or if someone is like a big drug addict and they don't want to stop doing drugs, I get that there are reasons to divorce. I'm not saying that I'm against divorce. I've been divorced and I've called off an engagement. So I am certainly not bashing people that get a divorce. I'm just saying sometimes it happens too quickly and people don't really put a lot of thought into their vows anymore or take them seriously, and they don't put a lot of effort into their marriages, I feel. Just my opinion. So let's say, though, you have someone that just wants to work it out because they feel like people give up too easily. That is their choice. And they, yes, maybe are in a bad situation, but they're trying. I don't fault people for that. And then if they decide to get a divorce, okay. But now, then you have the people who are in relationships that they do cheat over and over again. Let's say they cheat once and you're like, look, we're going to go to counseling and we're going to get through it. We'll forgive you. Okay. But if that person continues to cheat, or that person continues to lie, or that person continues to verbally and or physically abuse you, even after you have tried and tried and tried, then that is your choice. And it does get annoying in a way to have to hear people complain about things that you're like, look, you've been doing this for many years now. He has proven, he or she, women are not perfect, has proven time and time again to be a cheater. They've cheated on you numerous times. Why do you keep forgiving them? Why do you keep believing that they're not going to cheat? Why do you keep trying to make this marriage work? That is the time I understand why people say, well, that's your choice, but I still feel that's the wrong thing to say because people don't need it rubbed in their face. They don't need an I told you so. That's just rude. I think a better choice of words. Be like, okay, so this isn't working. This doesn't seem to be making you happy. What is another plan? What's something else we can try? What's something else you can do? Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. What's something else we can change or do to make the situation better? But that's your choice is so annoying. Just annoying. Gwendolyn. Oh my gosh, that was a whole thing. Anyway, I was talking about the whole I told you so thing and rubbing it in people's faces. And it doesn't mean that someone doesn't have a right to be upset or angry, but, you can say things differently, not that's your choice. Sometimes we make stupid choices. Sometimes we're just idiots because we're humans and that's what we're good at doing. None of us came with a manual. We're all figuring it out at the same time you are. I don't subscribe to perfection. So can't expect people to be perfect. Excuse me. It's frustrating when people don't allow you to vent and you start venting and they start comparing. Oh, I know, because it's like, you know what? I don't talk about the things that have happened in my life, which were awful. I mean, I do talk about them, but I don't talk about everything at all. I have had a very, very traumatic childhood and up until, well, still. So, and I've had many things happen and I just don't use them as excuses to be a bitch or excuses to be bitter or excuses to stay home and feel sorry for myself. Of course, I have my days. I certainly have my days where I feel sorry for myself. Certainly have my days where I make excuses and I'm bitter. But it's like a day or two. That's it. Oh my God, I got a phone call. That was ridiculous. Anyway, the whole comparing thing and venting and using excuses. I just, it's like you get diagnosed with something and now suddenly that means it's an excuse to, of course, obviously, if you have a genuine disability and you have a genuine, you're paralyzed or you're in a wheelchair or whatever. I understand there's definitely things that prevent you from working. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, if you have ADHD, you can work. If you have PTSD, you can work. It's hard. But if you have, it just depends on where. Of course, if you have PTSD, depending on what the PTSD is from, you should watch the places that you're working because you don't want to trigger your PTSD. And if you suffer from massive anxiety, you probably shouldn't work in places that cause you to be massively anxious, but you can still work, especially in a society today where a lot of work can come from home, But I just feel like people use things as an excuse now to be a bitch or to be bitter. And a lot of times it's their choices that they made. And if someone said that to them, they probably wouldn't like it, especially when they're grieving. Especially when they're sad, especially when they're depressed, especially when they have anxiety and they're exhausted, especially when they're a loyal person that if it weren't for that person, they probably wouldn't have a business because they would have had to have closed down because there was only like 2 people running the place and we were exhausted and going through our own stuff and not allowed to take a vacation because no one else was there to cover for us. So somehow that meant we couldn't have a vacation. And there were many things that I was going through at the time by myself without a partner. I didn't have anyone to vent to. I didn't have a mom or a dad or a grandma or a grandpa or a sister or a spouse. I didn't have siblings or a spouse. I was doing it all on my own while working full time, while single-handedly keeping a business open and then not getting a raise because I was told that they didn't have any money for a raise as they're buying everything in the world. But I was appreciated and they would buy me things with the money that they said they didn't have. It was just frustrating. And then paid me back by not telling me that they sold the place because there was a non-disclosure, even though there shouldn't have been a non-disclosure. That was my thing. I don't feel that you should give a non-disclosure because I feel that your employees are entitled to know because they can make the choice if they still want to work there or not, because they've been loyal and they've been single-handedly keeping the business open. And if it weren't for them, their business would have had to close. So they deserve to know if they still want to work there or not, or find another job. But instead, they did a non-disclosure so that I wouldn't tell them, hey, maybe I won't work, because they probably guaranteed a full staff. And one of the biggest selling points was that there was a full staff. And they didn't want to sell the place now and say, well, now there's no staff to run it, because then that person wouldn't buy it. Plus, they probably were worried that I would tell them what all the improvements that were needed, like a big ass root system. And that root system is getting into the well and the septic system and the parking lot. But they didn't disclose that. They didn't disclose to us that it had been on the market since February of 2020. I've known that forever. It's been on the market. It was on the market at that point for like 3 or 4 years. And yet they kept saying how it is worth this amount of money. It is worth this amount of money, even though the bank flat out said, no, it is not worth that amount of money. It's not worth the amount that you think it is. It's worth the amount we tell you it is. And we're telling you this is how much it's worth. You don't get to tell us. We've had several banks now, more than one bank, tell you this is how much it's worth. But they kept saying it was worth more. And then knowing that it needed massive improvements, because all they liked to do is duct tape everything. There's only so much duct tape that you can put on something. There's only so many rolls of duct tape before you finally have to get new things. So they left a rundown building that needed structural work, like it needed new concrete and cement. It needs the root system that's going into the septic and the well. And the filtration system sucks because every winter you have to worry about it freezing and stuff. So it's just a whole thing that they didn't want to disclose, and they didn't want to tell their employees that had been loyal to them, that had done everything and put their own lives on hold and didn't get vacation time or a raise. And you couldn't tell them that you have sold the place so they could make the decision, because I was going to move. I only stayed to help these people because they needed me. So I put my life on hold, because if I would have left, they would have had to close down the place, because they've already tried to find employees and nobody would work there because of how she treated people. And once she left, so many people were like, you are the reason that we are staying. You are kind. You are nice. You treat our dogs well. If you leave, we're going with you. So I was going to open up my own place, and I can do that. It doesn't matter, because the whole non-compete thing is a joke, especially because you have to redo that contract. I think it's every year. Plus it's a joke. No one ever wins those. My point is, I had options, and our customers flat out said they wouldn't be there if it weren't for me, because they didn't like the owner. And so I had all these options, and they kept that from me because they knew that. They knew that if I left, customers would leave. They knew if I left, the new owners would now be left with no staff. And they're not going to want to buy a place that doesn't have staff. And they're not going to want to buy a place whose customers just followed me. They didn't have to have a non-disclosure. They were like, well, we had a non-disclosure. Did you want us to be illegal and break our contract and go to jail? No, I wanted you not to have a non-disclosure, because that's bullshit and shady, and you know it. And we already knew that something was up. We could tell, because we aren't stupid, and we have eyes, and we can see, and we've known people for a while. And I started putting two and two together like a month beforehand. But I just kept thinking, they're going to tell us. They're going to tell us. Don't worry, have faith. They'll tell us. But no. And then they were going to make us as busy as possible, knowing that they were going to leave, knowing that we also may be short-staffed, and knowing that we had new owners. And they were just going to be like, it just was rude. It was selfish and rude, and putting their own thoughts before others. And that's fine. You got to do what you got to do. because they'd been trying to sell the place for 4 years and they knew it wasn't going to sell. And so then they found some poor people that had no idea what they were doing, completely walked into it blindly, which is their fault and their choice. It was their choice for not doing their due diligence. They should have done their due diligence. They should have done a walkthrough. These people bought the place sight unseen. They had their parents come in and look. And they went by what the previous owners told them, which is a bunch of manipulative little lies that they know is just enough of the truth that won't get them in trouble. But they didn't disclose a lot because they also knew that the place was falling apart and needed massive work. Not to mention that the outlets in the house are from like the fucking 1400s. So the electrical system, the heating system, all completely bad. To upgrade anything in there is going to cost a fortune. And they knew it and they didn't care. And those are the kind of people that bothered me, the shady motherfuckers that just don't care and they're only in it for themselves and no one else. They knew that the electrical system in the shop and the house needed to be revamped. They knew that that furnace was older than Jesus and needed to be restored in both the house and the shop. They knew that the septic wasn't good. They knew about the root system. And that is why they wanted a non-disclosure, because they didn't want any of that information to leak out through employees or anything. And like I said, they didn't want to sell a business that didn't have staff, because that was the biggest selling point. Oh, the staff has been here forever. They're loyal. They know what they're doing. They can run it for you until you can get in here. They can run it for you because you can't afford to hire new staff and train staff because you don't even know how to train them because you've never worked here before, which is the new owner's fault. They shouldn't have bought a place sight unseen without knowing what they are doing. And it is my choice to continue to stay there because I'm too loyal. I'm loyal to our customers. It's always been my customers. And I'm going to call them my customers. It's always been my customers that I have put first. I didn't want to leave before because I didn't want to leave them with the previous owner because she treated them terribly. And they told me that on a daily basis. If you weren't there, I wouldn't be here because we get treated like crap by the owner, which was true. And that's why there was such a turnover, too, with its staff. And that's pretty sure why I think her husband ended up turning into a butthead, because the poor guy had to work 2 jobs nonstop. He worked fucking 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and still got bitched at. While someone else just sat there after they were well recuperated and could have very easily come over, sat down and answered phones and all of that, answering phones and helped out. But at any rate, choices. We all have choices. And we can choose to be mad. We can choose to be angry. We can choose to make excuses. We can choose to stay with someone. We can choose to leave someone. We can choose to stay at a job or complain, or we can choose to make the best of it. We all have choices. And sometimes we make the good choice of what's best. Sometimes we do what's best for us and make a good choice. And sometimes we screw up. And then we have to suffer the consequences. And consequences can be a real bitch. Accountability can really bite you in the ass. I just know that when I die, I am content knowing that I'm a good person, that I'm a loyal person, that I will stand beside people even when it's not great for me, which isn't necessarily good because I'm making my own, mental health not great, which is never good. That's why they have you put on your own oxygen mask first, because you need to be healthy so that you can care for others. So it's a good and a bad trait, but I know that I'm a good person. I know that when I do things for people, it's not to try to keep them employed or to keep information away from them or because I'm trying to be shady and, get something out of it. It's not for my benefit. I know when I do things for people, it's genuinely for the benefit because I want to, because I genuinely want to help somebody, because I genuinely want to do something for somebody else. It's not to get something in return. It's not to make myself feel better. It's not out of being shady. So we have choices. What choice are you going to make today? Are you going to choose to wallow in self-pity? Are you going to choose to find a solution? Are you going to choose to make an excuse? Are you going to choose to cry? Because let me tell you, I've done all the above. I have chose to wallow in self-pity many times. I have chosen to make excuses many times. I have chosen to be depressed and lay in bed and cry. Because again, those are things that are okay to do. That's why we have emotions. We have emotions because we're supposed to cry and we're supposed to be angry and we're supposed to feel mad and sad and depressed and sometimes feel sorry for ourselves. But again, then it's about what choice do we make after that? Then do we choose to pick ourselves up and brush ourselves off and find a solution? Or do we choose to continue to make excuses and be a bad person? What choice? We do have choices. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do after this. Am I going to lay in bed and be lazy for the rest of the day because I've worked my butt off and I deserve it? Or am I going to give my dog a bath and clean the cat litter boxes? We shall see. Stay tuned. But anyways, what choice are you going to make today? Again, there's not necessarily a right or wrong choice. There's just consequences and accountability that you have to your choices. And, you just have to be comfortable with what those consequences are. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.